Hey there, Gabe Gang. I'm Gabe.
And what's up, movie fans? I'm Nick. Today, we're going to be reviewing Dune, Part 1.
From 2021. Coming up next! Alright, Nick, book-to-movie adaptations is something that can be really difficult. We've learned that a lot throughout history. Frank Herbert's Dune is a book that is very important to me. I read it in the 6th grade for a book report, and since then, I like the first book. I will say the Dune series gets pretty complicated afterwards, but I just gotta ask you, first off, do you like Frank Herbert's Dune? And if you do, how do you think they did adapting it to a movie?
So this is something I've thought a lot about. I actually just read Frank Herbert's Dune for the first time maybe 2 months ago.
Okay.
So I'm very, very new to it compared to you, and I would honestly say it's probably my favorite book of all time now.
Interesting.
I loved this book so much. I think the story, I think the character arc of Paul is just something that you still don't even really see now these days, and I feel like the book is just this one man's like whole life philosophies, like everything that he believes just beaten down into one book.
Yeah.
And I think it's incredible for that. I am working my way through the series. I loved the second book, Dune Messiah, and Children of Dune. I'm working my way through. Honestly, I don't like it as much, but I'm trying to power through it. But this movie, I think this movie works very well as an adaptation. You know, as someone who loves the book, I have to kind of quell that part of me that wants to be like, oh, they left this part out or they changed this part, because there are some big omissions. This is a 600-page book, and sure, this adapts the first like 70-75% of the book.
Yeah.
This movie, so they do have to cut a lot for time, but the stuff that they have in is very effective, I think. And one thing that I notice in this movie is the way that certain things will be shown to you very quickly. And it's like, if you're a fan of the book, you'll notice that right away. Like, one example that I thought of is in the book, they have shield combat.
Yep.
Right? Where the idea of it is, if I strike you very quick, right? That wasn't quick at all. But if I were to like do a lightning fast chop at Gabe, it wouldn't hit him because his shield would be on and it would repel it. Same thing if you were to get shot by a gun. But a slow attack can go through that shield. And they show that in the movie. They don't have like Paul's mentor Gurney Halleck go, listen, Paul, you can get through the shield with the slow attack. They show Paul like rapidly beating a knife against his hand, and then show him slowly doing it, and then it goes through.
Yep.
Which something you might the thing is, I don't have the perspective of someone who hasn't read the book seeing this movie, but I think that if you hadn't read the book, you might be like, what's going on? And especially like some other things like that, especially like the whole idea with the Bene Gesserit school.
Sure.
I think that's kind of like omitted a lot from the movie. I think that's definitely highlighted a bit more in the book. But overall, I do think that this works incredibly as an adaptation for such a hard book to adapt.
Yeah. One of the reasons I love the book Dune is because I believe it is the perfect encapsulation of the hero's journey.
Yes.
But you can't pull off the hero's journey unless you have good heroes. So let's break down some of those heroes and who plays them and how they do. Starting with, obviously, Paul Atreides, played by Timothée Chalamet. I am not the biggest Timothée Chalamet fan. I really like him in The French Dispatch, that also came out in 2021, and I like him in this, and I liked him in Dune Part 2. What do you think of his performance here?
I think he's great. I think he's very good in this movie. I think this with the book too. I think this part of the book that the movie's adapting, Paul doesn't have that much to like that Timothy could really flex his acting muscles with.
Sure.
I think in the second part of the book, or Dune Part 2, he's really going to start to like... I mean, you've seen it. For context, people, he's seen Dune Part 2. I'm seeing it in 2 days. I imagine that will be a much better way for him to like flex his acting muscles, just because, no spoilers, just the journey of Paul's character past that point. But I do think he works well, and I'm very excited to see what he does in the second part.
Awesome. Let's talk about some of the other heroes. You've got Duke Atreides, played by Oscar Isaac, who He's not in the movie for too much,
Yeah.
but he does a lot with what he has to be a great father figure. What do you think of his performance?
I think he's fine. I don't know. It's not the performance. It is like the amount of time he's around, which he can't really be around for that long because he does. I guess spoilers for this movie. Halfway through the movie, he does die in like the Harkonnen attack. But I think he works well with what he's given. The one thing that I wish is that his relationship with Jessica could have been more fleshed out in the movie because they have one scene.
Yes.
To their credit, it is one scene, but like there could have been so much.
There's
more.
not much chemistry.
There's
there.
really
Let's be
not.
honest. So Jessica is played by Rebecca Ferguson.
Yes.
So she is a Bene Gesserit. They're kind of space witches, is maybe the best comparison to make. Then you've got Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho. Jason Momoa is a chemistry king. He was even great in Fast X. If you can be good in Fast X, that's everything you need to know about someone. And then Josh Brolin plays Gurney Halleck, who, as you said, is Paul's mentor. Josh Brolin, incredible. I've loved him ever since No Country for Old Men from 2007. So the heroes are great. But I think where the Dune universe really shines is the villains.
Yeah.
Because the Harkonnens are a family of straight up evil. So tell me about some of your favorite performances in the Harkonnen family, and if you think they were effective at being these intergalactic despots.
I think these were with Dave Bautista and Stellan Skarsgård, who plays the Baron, right? I think these were very inspired choices. It's probably not what I would have went with, and especially like the look of them, where they're definitively like a bald family.
Yes.
That's not what I imagined. And honestly, the look of them, the look of the Harkonnens in the 1984 David Lynch Dune, I actually do kind of like. One of the few things that I like in that movie, but I like their like design in that. Definitely, but I think Stellan Skarsgård definitely has this like menace about him, especially in that long black coat. The way they always light him, and he's always like in the shadows. It's just it makes you. It does such a good job of making you fear him and like his power because you know it's so immense. Especially like that first scene in the movie, they kind of set it up. They have Zendaya basically saying, yeah, the Harkonnens have been in control of my planet for the last several decades, right? Their presence is felt so strongly throughout the movie, and I think Dave Bautista was a super good choice for Raban because he has like he can so easily project, especially like his looks definitely help to project like the angry, ruthless idea that that Raban has so firmly in the books.
Yeah. Stellan Skarsgård said when he was playing Baron Harkonnen, he pictured himself as a rhino, which I think is a perfect comparison. He is a massive human being.
Yes, huge.
But once he gets started, he's not finishing until the job is over, and I think that's fantastic. I love Dave Bautista. I'm a huge professional wrestling fan.
Yeah.
If you've seen Blade Runner 2049, another movie he did with Denis Villeneuve, you realize that this man has the capacity to be so subtle, but then can flip on a dime and be this vortex of anger and fear, and he's incredible.
He really is such
Speaking
a
of fear, David Dastmalchian in this movie is this creepy, sick scientist who creates one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in a movie, which is the spider person.
It's so
yucky.
Gross.
I'm not a big fan. Yes.
I love how weird Dune is. It just like I don't know. While I was reading the book and watching the movie, like I was kind of making those automatic comparisons to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Just that you do with like any sci-fi thing,
of course.
really. And I love how weird and different Dune is. Like it's all about the politics and like these religions, and it's just it's just so it feels so off kilter, and that's what I really like about it. And I feel like David as Piter de Vries really captured that. But going back for a second. There was one Harkonnen who was not in this movie, who will be in part 2.
Well, a couple, but...
Yeah, right. But the main one is Fade Rautha, who throughout the book, he is introduced in the second chapter.
Played by Sting, the singer from The Police, in David Lynch's Dune, which the less we say about that, the better.
Yeah, that was definitely a choice. I don't know if I'd say it was like an inspired choice, but... what do you think of the choice to leave him and Princess Irulan, who's going to be played by Florence Pugh, out of this first part of the movie? Because it was definitely an interesting.
So my NDA has expired, and I can say anything I want, but you haven't seen it, so I don't want to spoil it for you. Austin Butler will be winning the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for Dune 2. I feel very confident saying that. And the reason they cut him out is because he is truthfully one of the stars of Dune 2.
Wow.
Florence Pugh, maybe not so much. She maybe should have been in this. Fade Rautha is incredible in Dune 2, and I think it was the right decision to leave him out. Now, there's a couple other characters who I think maybe should have been left out, and that's the Fremen, played by Zendaya and Javier Bardem. And I only say this because they have very little time in the movie, and we have very little time left in this review. So, lightning round. Hans Zimmer, his score, impeccable. He literally created new instruments to make this happen.
Insane.
The cinematography, I believe it's done by the same guy who did the Batman.
Is it Greg Fraser?
I think it's Greg Fraser who did the Batman. Brilliant cinematography. The visual effects are genuinely insane.
Some of the best I've ever
The
seen.
worms feel massive. Did you see this in theaters?
No.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I didn't catch
So
the release.
seeing this in theaters, I was triple masked in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden the worms start coming out of the
Oh my
ground,
gosh.
and the entire theater starts shaking,
Yeah.
and you genuinely feel their scale. And the ornithopters, they look like real planes. Like, it looks like Denis Villeneuve commissioned 6-wing battle planes to be made, dude.
I looked it up, and this is the one thing I could keep thinking after watching that movie. I think the budget of Dune Part 1 was $165 million.
Okay.
I think, around that.
Sure.
Just the absolute star power down the list in this movie, combined with some of the best visual effects I've ever seen. How did they pull it off? With, obviously, that's a big budget, but looking at that, you would expect, $350 million if that were made by, Disney.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or Warner Brothers.
Or if it was made by Ridley Scott, this would have been like a $600 million movie. And that's no disrespect to Ridley Scott, whom I love. And then finally, Denis Villeneuve is just an incredible director. My best friend Tucker, who I do a podcast with, he's trying to argue that Denis Villeneuve is a better director than Chris Nolan. I'm not ready to go that far, but I will say Denis Villeneuve is one of the 10 best directors working in Hollywood right now.
Yeah.
And I believe that. All right, we got to give our scores. So what are you giving Dune from 2021 on a scale from 1 to 10?
So the one thing I keep thinking about this movie, besides the other thing about the budget, is that I can't believe this movie exists.
Yeah.
And that it's not only in a good adaptation of a book that I love, it's a great one. This movie is, no wonder it kind of swept the Oscars the year it came out, or at least got a bunch of nominations.
It got a bunch of nominations. Unfortunately, didn't win too much.
Yeah. Which sucks.
Dune 2 is gonna clean house. I'm feeling pretty confident about that.
Totally. I'm so excited to see it. But there were a couple omissions from the book. Some of the things that I really liked, some of my favorite parts of that front half of the book, were omitted. And I really think the story would have been better with them. And if I came right out of seeing this movie for the first time, I would have gone 10.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking since those omissions were out, I think I am going to give this movie still a glowing 9 out of 10.
I'm the same way. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. I kind of glossed over it, but they introduced Zendaya and Javier Bardem's characters very, very quickly.
Yes.
And then immediately you just get Chani, who's Zendaya's character, looking at the camera, and then the movie fades to black. And I understand that's a COVID thing. I understand it had to be 2 parts. So that might change once I watch Dune and then Dune Part 2 literally back to back.
Yep.
Haven't had the opportunity to do that yet, but right now, because I don't have a concrete ending, it's getting a 9, which is how I feel about Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers, for example.
Yeah. Still great movies.
Yeah, I love Dune. I love doing this review with you.
Aww.
Thanks for doing the most with me.
Gabe.
But anyways, that's our review of Dune. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.